purpose of this lesson is to learn what inheritance is, how to extend classes, what access specifiers are, how to override base class members, what abstract classes are and how to use them, and then also how to use interfaces. Inheritance is the process where the more general parent classes apply to more specific child classes. And what that means is that I can define a class of objects like automobile, and then I can make smaller subclasses of that, things like pickup trucks and convertibles and sports cars and so forth. All of those subclasses are going to inherit things like that they have wheels, that they have a hood, that they have doors, that they will have an engine. But then what they're going to do is they're going to override some of the methods and some of the properties of the parent class. So while a convertible has a top, it's going to have a type of top that can be removed. And then while an automobile has a cargo area, it may be that a car has a trunk and a pickup truck has a bed. Now the advantages of this is the things that overlap in all of the child classes we just simply define in one spot. We define that all at the parent class, and then the child classes we only define the things that are different. And what this does for us is it makes for less coding, it makes for less work on our part as the developer, it makes for less work to actually create and modify the code, it makes our program easier to understand and also easier to troubleshoot. The terminology here is that we have what's called a base or a parent or a superclass. This is the topmost level. This is the class from which other classes will inherit things. A class that inherits something is going to be either a derived or extended or a child or a subclass. You'll hear all of these terms used interchangeably. So all of these are going to be a class that inherits properties from somebody else. And all of this is called ancestors. So I can have a bunch of convertibles that all inherit properties from a base class called automobile, and the base class called automobile is all the ancestor from or for all of those other derived classes. This is called transitive inheritance, and then what that means is that the child classes are going to inherit properties from the parent classes, and then we can override those. So if you think about people, you have a parent and you have a child, and the child has eyes, the child has hair, the child has a skin color. All of that stuff typically gets inherited from the parent, but it's possible for it to be different. So while it's normal for the child to have eyes, the eyes are going to be different eye color from the parent. So we're simply overriding the property of the parent object. We can extend classes. So we could actually take a child class and we can extend methods that are available in the parent class. So let's say I have a parent class that has a method for calculating somebody's commission. I could have a child class, which is somebody that gets commission calculated differently, and then I can override the base class's calculation. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to only allow an inheritance one direction. We only allow it from the parent to the child. We can't go from the child to the parent. What we're going to use is a keyword called protected, and what this does is it makes it where a child class is allowed to override things in the parent class, but we should only use this as often as we really need to use it. The child class, like I said, is able to override methods from the parent class, and this functionality is called polymorphism. So essentially what it is the parent class may have a method for opening a file, and then the child class may also have another method for opening a file, but maybe it has things for how to open a specific type of file that the parent class doesn't understand. So polymorphism means that they both have the same name, they both have the same function name, but the function name works differently. Now if I want to, I can hide my methods and my attributes from the parent classes, but I can still access the parent class methods by using what's called the base keyword. Alright, so when I call a method in a child class that is being inherited from a parent class that we're trying to override, we actually are going to run the constructor for the base class method, and then we will run the same constructor for the child class method. So what happens is we're running the constructor for the base class, but then we're just simply going to override the constructor with the one for the derived class. We also have these things called abstract classes. Now, an abstract class is kind of like a parent or a base class, except a little bit different in the regards that I cannot make an instance of it. Okay, what I mean by that is if I talk about the general overall automobile class, do I really want to make an object that is just an automobile? Or would I rather make an automobile that is a truck, or an automobile that is a car, or an automobile that is a convertible, or an automobile that is a tractor, or an automobile that is a motorcycle? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the parent class an abstract class, which means that you're not allowed to actually make an instance of the generic overall automobile class. But you can make derived classes that will inherit all the properties of that base class, and then the derived classes are allowed to actually have an instance made. Now what happens is in the abstract class we're going to use the abstract keyword, and then in our derived classes we'll use the override keyword. The problem is that a child class can only inherit from at most one parent class. So I can't inherit things from two different classes at the same time. I can only inherit from one. A way around that is to use what's called an interface. And an interface is kind of like an abstract class, but it actually has methods and attributes and so forth that have to be overridden. So what happens is I have an interface that has a color or some sort of method for performing a task. Well, then when I call it, when I make a derived class that uses that interface, I can use multiple interfaces, but I have to override the properties and all of the other attributes that are in that interface. So we cannot actually instantiate an interface. We can only use that to inherit properties into our child classes. All right, similar to the example that I used in the last lesson, I'm going to go ahead and make a class of items called automobile. And my class of things called automobile are just simply that we have these things that have an engine size, number of tires, and a color. Every automobile has that. So I'm going to make a public double, and we'll call it engine size. This is how many liters the engine is. And we are going to provide the default get and set methods. And then I'm also going to have an integer value for the number of tires with the get and set. Yep. Okay, so my keyword didn't take, so we'll put that back in there. And then we're going to have a public string for color with the get and set. Alright, so this is what an automobile is. We just have a generic class of things with for automobiles that have an engine size, number of tires, and a color. And so what I want to do is I want to create an instance of this. Before I forget to do it, I'm going to do my console.read. That way we can actually watch what it does on the screen. Alright, so I'm going to make a new automobile, and I'm going to call it Auto1. So whatever this automobile is. And this is going to be a new automobile. And our new automobile is going to have things like engine size, and that's going to be a 2.0. Number of tires, it has 4 tires. And then the color is going to be silver. Alright, so then the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to write onto the screen what it is. So I'm going to say console.writeLine. And then we're going to have engine size, and this is going to be 0. And what I'm going to do is my escape sequence, so a line break, and then number of tires. This is going to be item 1, another line break, and then our color. And this is going to be item 2. Okay, so engine size is going to be auto1 dot, and then we have engine size. Item 2 is auto 1 dot, and then we have number of tires. And then the other item is going to be auto 1 dot, and then color. And then that's it. Alright, so what I want to do is I'm going to run this, and we're going to display that we have an automobile with a 2.0 engine, 4 tires, and the color is silver. So all I've done is just simply instantiated one instance of our automobile class. Right now our class is fairly limited, and I want to add some functionality to it. We have automobiles that have engine size, number of tires, and colors, but we don't necessarily have to have an automobile that's just very limited like that. So what I want to do is I want to create some other classes. I'm going to create a class of items called cars. And a car is a type of automobile, so I'm going to specify that by putting a colon and then typing what it gets its properties from. Alright, so inside of this class we have something like a trunk size. So I'm going to make an accessor and mutator method here for the trunk size. So I'm going to say public double trunk size, and then we have our get and our set. Alright, and then I also have a subclass of things called trucks, and those are also automobiles. So I'm going to do it like this, where I have a truck, and these are going to have a public double bed length instead. And then these are going to have the default get and set modifiers. Okay, so now what I can do is I can instantiate our automobile, and I can instantiate our car and our truck. And if I instantiate a car will have all of the properties of an automobile: an engine size, the number of tires, and a color, and a trunk size. A truck will have all of the properties of an automobile, so engine size, number of tires, and a color, and a bed length. So what I can do is I can specify that my particular vehicle, if I want a car or a truck, is going to have these other properties also. Alright, so if I come up here, I still have my auto, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new object, which is a car. And if I do a car, I'm going to call it car1, and we're going to make this equal to a new car. We're going to use the default constructor, and then we're going to set some things. So you'll notice we have engine size. Alright, so the engine size for this car is 2.4. This car does have a number of tires, which is going to be 4. And it has a color, which in this case is going to be red. And it also has the trunk size. So you notice that we have the properties of the automobile, and we have the properties of the car itself. So this is going to be a 9.3, maybe it's cubic feet. So there's my car. And I'm going to make another car, I'll call it car2, which is going to be a new car. Oops, not a new car1, new car. And then, once again, we're going to have engine size, and this is going to be a 1.3, so it has a small engine in it. Number of tires, once again, is going to be, actually, let's make this a 3-wheeler. The color, this one's going to be yellow. And the trunk size, it has a little small trunk in it, so it's 1.2. So now I have 2 cars. Now I have an automobile, which is our generic automobile class. So auto 1 is just a generic automobile. This one does not have a trunk. But these two, because they are cars, they have all the properties that auto 1 does, plus a trunk. Alright, so I'm going to make a truck now. And we'll call this truck 1. This is a new truck. And we're going to give it the same thing. So it has an engine size. And so this is a 4.8, maybe it's 4.8 liter. Number of tires is equal to 4. And then we're going to have the color. This is a black truck. And then we also have bed length. And you'll notice that it did not offer me the trunk size because the truck does not have that. So this is going to have a 5.8 foot bed. Okay, and we're going to make another truck, which is called truck 2, which is a new truck. And it's going to have engine size. It's a 5.6. Number of tires, this is a dually, so this one has 6 tires on it. Color, this truck we're going to make it white, maybe it's a fleet truck. And bed length is going to be 8.0 feet. So I now have an automobile, which is generic class. I have car 1 and car 2, which both have the same properties as an automobile plus the trunk size. And then I have truck 1 and truck 2 that have all the same properties of an automobile plus a bed length. Now these are underlined over here, and so it says requires a double. Represents a double. Error is only assignment and can use a statement. Okay, so it's throwing an error here, but this should be okay. But let's go check our description down here, public double, and so we have it as a double, so that's okay. Sometimes it'll actually throw an error like that just because it thinks that something is wrong even though it isn't. Unless, let's see here, I put parentheses, should be curly bracket. There we go. That fixed the error. Okay, so what I did is I had parentheses instead of a curly bracket. Alright, so now what I can do is I can print this out to the console and write the properties of all of these vehicles. Alright, so just so I don't have to retype all of this, I'm going to copy our automobile, the output for it, and this is going to be car 1, and car 1. And then we also have the bed length. So I'm going to make one more thing here, which is going to be \n, trunk size. And that's going to be 3. So we have car1 dot trunk size. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing here. We're going to copy this, and we'll do this for car 2. So now it will display the properties of our cars. Alright, I want to do the same thing for a truck, so I have to modify this just a little bit. This is going to be bed size this time. And this isn't going to be car, this is going to be truck 1. And then if we change this to truck 1, okay, watch this. If I just change it, you'll notice we now get an error on trunk size because truck 1 does not have a trunk size, it has a bed length. Alright, so we're going to copy this, paste it, and we're going to do the same thing for truck 2. Alright, so now what we've done is we created 5 automobiles. 1 is generic class, 2 are cars, and 2 are trucks. I'm going to run it. And there we go. So here are all of our vehicles. So now if I want to, I can do line breaks between these, make them look a little bit neater. So let's go ahead and do this so you can see the difference between them. Alright, let's go ahead and run it. And there we go. So this is our generic automobile. This is a car, it has a trunk size. This is a car, it has a trunk size. This is a truck, it has a bed size. And this is another truck that has a bed size. But what we're doing is we're making it where these child classes, they will inherit all the properties that the parent class has, plus be allowed to add things to them. Like I said earlier, I may not necessarily want to be able to create an automobile without specifying what type of automobile it is. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the keyword abstract before class. And what this does is it makes it where I'm not allowed to instantiate an instance of an automobile. I have to instantiate the derived classes. So what happens if I come up here, now I got an error because I tried to make this automobile. I can't actually do it because it says cannot create an instance of the abstract class or interface. So what it knows is that automobile itself, yes, it has these properties, but we're basically stating you're not allowed to create an instance of it. So what that means is I now have to get rid of automobile, and I have to get rid of the references to auto 1. I can keep the car and the truck because those are derived classes, but I cannot have an instance of the base class. So I get to keep my cars, I get to keep my trucks, but I don't get to keep the instance of the derived class, the base class. In this lesson, you learned what inheritance is, how to extend classes, how to use the access specifiers, how to override base class members. You learned about abstract classes which cannot be instantiated, and then you also learned about interfaces.